Ravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashottara Shata Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashottara Shata Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai All glories to the Sama devotees. All glories to the Sama devotees. All glories to the Sama devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnu Pada Krishna Krishna Pada Vishnu Namo Vishnu Pada Krishna Krishna Pada Vishnu Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitya Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravana Vicharini Nirvisheshashna Vripashtata Dashitarini Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter number 19, entitled The Appearance of Shukadeva Goswami. Text number 26. Tam Dvi Ashta Varsham Sukha Kumara Pada Kada Uru Bahu Amsa Kapora Gatam Charu Ayata Aksha Unasa Tulya Karna Subhru Anam Kambu
humble,
sujata
sujata,
kantam tam drashtavarsham sukumarapada
tam just varsham sukumara pada
karorubhavam sakapolagatram
karorubhavam sakapolagatram
charvayataksho nasa tulyakarna
charvayataksho asatuyakarna
subhrivananam kambusujatakantam
subhranam sujatakantam
tam dvyashtavarsham sukumarapada
tam jastavarsham sukumarapada
karorubhavam sakapolagatram
karorubhavam sakapolagatram
charvyayataksho nasatulyakarna
charvayataksho asatuyakarna
subhrivananam kambusujatakantam
subhananam kambusujatakantam
tam dvyashtakasham sukumarapada
tam jayastavarsham sukumarapada
karorubhavam sakapolagatram
karorubhavam sakapolagatram
charvayataksho nasatulyakarna
charvayataksho asatuyakarna
subhrivananam kambusujatakantam
subhavanam kambusujatakantam tam dvyastavarsham sukumarapada
tam dvashtavarsham sakumarapada
karorubhavam sakapolagatram
karorubhavam sakapolagatram
charvayataksho asatuyakarna
charvayataksho nasatulyakarna
subhavanam kambu sujatakantam
subhrivananam kambusujatakantam
tam dvashtavarsham sukumarapada karorubhavam sakapolagatram charvayataksho nasatulyakarna subhrivananam kambusujatakantam
tam dvastavarsham sukumarapada karorubhavam sakapolagatram arvyaktaksho nasyatulakarna subhrivananam kambusujatakantam
tam gyashtavarsham sukumarapada karorubhavam sakapolagatram charvayataksho nasatulyakarna subhrivananam kambusujatakantam
tam dvashtavarsham sukamarapada karorubhavam Kapolagatram Jarvaya Takshona Satuya Karna Subravanam Kambu Sujata Kantam
Tam Devaya Stavarsham Sukumarapada Karoruavam Sakapolagatram Charvaya Takshona Satuya Karna Subrivanam Kambu Sujata Kantam
Angvastavarsham Sukumarapada Karor Pavangsha Kapolagatram Sarvaya Takshona Satuya Karna Subrivanam Kambu Sujata Kantam
Prananam Kambhujat.
Oh, is there anyone online?
From Vastavarsan Sukumapada
Ruv. Supravan.
Guru Vamansa Kapulagatra
The letters in one consonant or one, what do you call it?
Syllable?
Yeah, in one syllable you get SUBHRVAN. All that in one consonant. Subha.
Subshiva.
This one might take out.
Tam him dve ashta 16 varsham years sukumara delicate pada legs kara hands uru thighs vahu arms amsa shoulders kapola forehead gatram body charu beautiful ayata broad aksha eyes unasa high nose tulya similar karna ears Suru, nice brows. Pardon me. Face. Kambu, conch shell. Sujata, nicely built. Kantam, neck. Translation. This son of Vyasadeva was only 16 years old. His legs, hands, thighs, arms, shoulders, forehead, and the other parts of his body were all delicately formed. His eyes were beautifully wide, and his nose and ears were highly raised. He had a very attractive face, and his neck was well formed and beautiful like a conch shell. Purport. A respectable personality is described beginning with the legs, and this honored system is observed here with Shukadev Goswami. He was only 16 years of age. A person is honored for his achievements and not for advanced age. A person can be older by experience and not by age. Sri Shukadev Goswami, who is described herein as the son of Vyasadeva, was by his knowledge more experienced than all the sages present there, although he was only 16 years old. Tam dvyashta varsham sukha kumara pada karoru bhavamsa kapola gatram charva yata kshonasya tulyakarna subrivananam kambu sujata kantam. Translation: This son of Vyasadeva was only 16 years old. His legs, hands, thighs, arms, shoulders, forehead, and the other parts of his body were all delicately formed. His eyes were beautifully wide, and his nose and ears were highly raised. He had a very attractive face, and his neck was well formed and beautiful like a conch shell. So, yes.
It says he's 16 years old. That 16 years was past when he was in the womb of his mother. This is very unusual. Human embryo stays in the womb for 16 years. But it's described here, and the Vedic culture has quite a scientific understanding of reproduction, things like this. For example, it's described in connection with the twins, Hiranya and Hiranyaksha. So the one that's conceived first comes out second, because the one that's conceived second comes out first. That combination of the male semen and the egg from the female, the first one is put in, but then the next one comes in front of it. So that child comes out first. But actually, the child that comes out second is older. He's senior. They observe that he was a senior, even though it was almost at the same time, twins, but so one can marvel at the Vedic culture in so many ways. So much detailed information, even materially. For example, 8,400,000 species. The botanists have, and biologists and things, they've been trying to count up the species for a long time. Still, they haven't reached the conclusion yet. But the Vedas give us information. What to speak of cosmology? They give us information about the structure of the universe, how the universe is moving, how time is calculated from the atom, the time it takes for the sun to pass over an atom is considered the smallest particle of time that one can calculate in this material world. And we were reading something the other day, a devotee was pointing out that they're trying to discover the Indo-European, Proto-Indo-European language. It's an imagined language that was the mother language to Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin. But of course, no language ever existed. But they seem to have some prejudice against considering that it was the Sanskrit language as the mother language. So they made up one instead. But Vedic culture is just so advanced in so many fields. Who gives so much information about the soul? Generally, the soul is not even discussed in, well, it's not discussed in, of course, modern science, or so-called science as we know it. And it's discussed a little bit in different religious cultures, but nothing like the Vedic, where the whole science, the size of the soul is given, and his constitution, and what the spirit is made of. We've never heard that the spirit is made of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. These are not considered ordinary substances that one can form something with. How do you form something with eternity, knowledge, and bliss? You have to ask the supreme engineer. So again and again we marvel at how advanced the Vedic culture was or is. And it certainly behooves everyone in every sphere to take advantage of the Vedic wisdom, even if they're interested in material things, even if they think they're not interested in spiritual things. Like the scientists, they don't think they're looking for anything spiritual. They would object. There's no such thing as spiritual. We just talk facts. But they want the origin of the universe, and because they don't accept the version of the Vedas, they have come up with their idea, a scientific, so-called scientific way of concluding what the source of the universe or matter is. And they come up with something that's infinitely small and infinitely dense, or something. They have some description. And the universe comes out of that somehow. All the elements of the universe come out of that. So instead of accepting that there's Anoraniyam Mahato Mahiyan, say that Krishna is smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest. If Andantarasta Paramanu Jayantarastam, Lord Brahma says, he even enters every atom. Supreme Lord. Instead of accepting the version of Brahma, they try to imagine their own idea. So this will always be a flawed system of so-called knowledge. But the Vedas, it comes down from Krishna, from God, from the perfect person, the original Adi Purusham. Wouldn't that be, at least theoretically, wouldn't everyone in different fields have to admit that if the original person, if there were such a thing as God, and he was giving information, it would have to be the best information. They'd have to agree. Unless they just say, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to think about it, because it's ridiculous. Which they often, that's how they deal with things like that. They just reject. But if they could be a little, speak for a moment objectively, just imagine if there were such a person who knew everything, who had all abilities. Parasha Shakti Vividhai Vishriyate, Swabhavaki Jnana Balakriyacha. He had unlimited energies that act so wonderfully that they seem to be automatic. There are some thinkers like that we are hearing in the, Prabhupada was discussing the Western philosophers in the book Dialectical Spiritualism. And some of these thinkers had come along those lines. Perhaps they got the ideas from the Vedas. It wouldn't be surprising because, for example, the Greeks, ancient Greeks, they were well-to-do, most of them, coming from very well-to-do families, and for them to go to India would not have been a very difficult task. And from Rome to India, and they never did. They learned from. Even there's a book that claims that Jesus went to India and stayed at Jagannath Puri, was associating with the Vaishnavas there at Jagannath Puri. So this is quite possible. They say that, and wise men from the east. Well, what's east of Jerusalem? India. So that's stars connection. Who had knowledge of the stars at that time? This is Vedic knowledge goes back millions and millions of years. And instead of trusting bones that one digs up and then speculating about where the bones came from, if we accept the real knowledge of the Vedas, just the fact that it's in the Vedas and it's authentically given and recorded by the great sages, then that is evidence. That's pramanam. The best evidence. Shabda. Shabda praman. There's different evidences in induction, inference, direct, aksha, one with his eyes or his senses he perceives something, that's a kind of pramanam. But the topmost pramanam is shabda, that which is heard from authorities. Things heard from God, that's the best pramanam. Or one of God's direct representatives. For example, in this universe, we have Brahma. Brahma is the next person besides the Lord to be in this universe. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu located that one chapter, it's only one chapter we have of Brahma Samhita. There's 100 chapters. We haven't seen the others yet, but the one chapter we have is beautiful. Spoken by Brahma. This is high-class information. Unassailable. Pramana. Brahma doesn't say anything that's not true. We see even in the case of persons in more recent times, devotees, if they say something, it must happen. It must be true. These exalted personalities. If they, like even that Shringi, in this particular case, he's not even a very learned or advanced personality. But because he was associating with his father, who was a very advanced personality, he learned some aspects of how to chant mantras. And by chanting these mantras, he was able to curse such a great personality as Maharaj Parikshit. This is an amazing culture. And people need to know this, because if they don't know it, then they'll imagine things. We see that tendency. Tendency is we're looking for the truth. We're looking for the ultimate in every field. And if we don't get the Vedic version, then we'll try to imagine something. We have all these different creatures imagined Spider-Man, Superman, all different types. Because we won't accept the Vedas, we won't accept that there are people that have mystic powers, there are yogis, and there's the supreme yogi, Lord Krishna, and then there's Lord Shiva, yogis. They are mystic yogis, they can do so many things. So if we don't accept the Vedic correct version, we'll imagine something from our imagination, which will be imperfect. But we're going to search in these directions anyway. So, unfortunately, in so many different fields, they feel quite threatened by the Vedic culture because it's just so superior. It's so exalted that others are afraid their own background will be challenged by the knowledge in the Vedas. By giving the Vedas the credit for which they deserve. Giving India the credit for which it deserves. Einstein gave credit to India. He said, we learned how to count from the Vedas, from the Indians, from India. Jyoti Shastra is full of very high level mathematics. Millions of years ago spoken and understood. So, if we don't know what type of creatures are in the 8,400,000, then we'll just imagine it. We don't know who lived here before. We don't have the history that goes back that far. But Vedic does. Carl Sagan, the scientist, he recognized, at least out of all the world's religions, the Vedic one is the most scientific because it describes the universe in terms of cycles. Brahma's one day is 4.3, 8.6 1,000 ages taken together is Brahma's one day. 1,000 ages means 4.3 million. That is one Chatur Yuga. One
Kalpa?
Hmm?
Is it called a kalpa?
A day is kalpa, yeah. A day of Brahma is called a kalpa. 1,000 ages of the 4 cycles, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga, taken together, 4.3 million. And such also is his night, 8.6 million years, but multiply that times 1,000, 8.6 billion years is the duration of Brahma's one day, and he lives for 30 such days. Times 12, that's a year. Times 100, that's his lifetime. Comes out 311 trillion some odd years. That's his lifetime. And then he dies. And then there's a period, same period of time, while Mahavishnu inhales. He described all this. You've seen, those of you who've seen our Vedic Cosmos, you see the footage is there. He's describing this. So one has to appreciate the Vedic culture on so many different levels. So why not, especially the spiritual level? Paravidya. There's aparavidya, which is inferior knowledge, like geology and these things. They're not, they have value, of course, or martial arts, or architectural arts, music. When you hear the type of musical descriptions that are given in the Vedic culture, you're amazed. How could anyone imagine such things? That's the thing. The truth is always greater than our imagination. And Garga Samhita gives some indication of the musical expertise, musical science. Saraswati is the goddess of learning, and she's a master in these musical science. So Narad learned from her, and they learned from gopis. So what do the gopis have to do with all these amazing song transformation, musical transformation? Because they have to use it for pleasing Krishna. They have to entertain Krishna in ever new, fresh ways, every moment. That's their job. So they know all these millions and millions of song, of musical components. So it never ceases to amaze one how vast and how rich the Vedic culture is, Vedic literature. And we can be completely confident that we're on the right path of education. We don't have to think, as people might say, well, you're just studying your own religion. What about all the other things in the world? Everything's included in this. Asmin vigyate saramete vigyatam bhavati. One who knows Krishna, he knows everything. Because Krishna is the source of everything. He is the knower of everything. Past, present, future. So, it's certainly possible for Shukadeva Goswami to be so learned, even though he learned it in the womb. Because the soul is conscious. They're trying to figure out whether there is a living, whether the creature whether that embryo is alive. I don't know how they can debate that. If it's growing and it's forming ears and nose and heartbeats and brain waves and things, even by their own calculations, it has to be alive. So it becomes silly, actually, to try to supersede the knowledge of the Vedas. It's just fruitless. And even if some of it's hard to believe, still one should not disbelieve it, because it's coming from the Supreme Source. One should have confidence and faith that when I reach a certain level, I'll be able to understand this. I may not be able to understand it now, but I have confidence and faith because it's given to me through disciplic succession, through parampara. And I have faith in persons like A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta, so learned, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So many learned, vastly learned personalities in so many fields. So I have faith that this is true. I'm just not able to perhaps realize it or understand it at this point, but in due course, if it's needed for my service, Krishna will reveal these things. It's like Brahma. Brahma was given the task of being the engineer of the universe. It's a big job. to design all the different parts of the universe. He had to design the different bodies, 8,400,000 species, he had to design them. Then he had to create and manipulate subtle energies like hatred and fear and love and envy. All these things had to be designed by Brahma. Different species, different types. So he was, how am I going to be able to do this? How am I going to design a universe that keeps going with the sun revolving and stars revolving? He didn't have that knowledge. But Krishna imbued him with that knowledge. Tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dami buddhi yogam tam yena mama puyanste. Those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So we come to, the living entities come to Krishna through devotional service. Krishna then will give the intelligence needed for a devotee to perform his particular service so that he can please the Lord by that service and then be accepted into the company of the Lord. Whatever that service may be. If he sincerely does that service, it'll become an amazing work of art in any field. And we see that. Devotees in every field that they devote themselves, they just become masterful because they're getting inspiration and training from the super soul. Krishna is in everyone's heart. And when someone opens his heart to Krishna and wants to do Krishna's service, then Krishna can do amazing things through that soul, like create a universe. Like preach all over the world. Even Prabhupada said, even one soul can become so powerful he can liberate all the souls in the universe by his preaching. So by being an avid, surrendered soul to the wish of the Lord empowers one unbelievably. Nothing that's impossible for them.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the sum of devotees.